slept here for days. I felt your heartbeat, felt your mouth breathe, but it's not real. We were close to see the sun, but clouds got in our way, and
Hello and welcome. Don't know, I've personally had enough of that music. I'm gonna change it because all I do is hum it. For those that haven't listened today, where have you been? But you could watch everything on demand after this and in various posts that I'm sure I'll put up. It's been a great few hours. We've had Paul Streeter. We've had a panel discussion with exhibitors. We've just had the fantastic Stephen Murta, the exhibition guy. I can't say that we've saved the best to last because that would be very rude on my previous guests. But obviously we have saved the best to last. I'm going to introduce my next special speaker in a minute. Once again, just want to thank my community patrons, Hyve Group, Tarsus Group, Easyfairs, SISO, Smart Digital, and Rerusni. So thank you, and also 19 events. Who could forget them? So without further ado, the last session of the day, or if you're watching on demand, could be your first session. Going to introduce the lovely Debbie Lee from Benchmark Collective.
Hello, Dan. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this Rebook Fast Forward session, which is part of Dan Asser's. You're right, Dan. Are you still there?
Yeah, it's all right. I'm just having some sort of mental breakdown.
Don't have a breakdown on me. Don't have a breakdown.
The good news is I'm going to leave you in the capable hands of Debbie. That's your presentation, I think. Can everyone see that? And Debbie, when you need me, just call. And can I just say, any comments you've got for Debbie, I'm going to be monitoring them, and we can ask some questions throughout on afterwards. So enjoy.
Okay, thanks, Dan. So welcome everybody to this Rebook Fast Forward session, which is part of Dan's sales floor afternoon that he's had. It's been a real privilege to listen to my fellow sales professionals and their sessions, really interesting. In this session, we're going to be looking ahead to our next in-person event and how we can fast forward our sales performance and our client experience through the power of Rebook. As Dan said, if you have any questions at all during the session, please post them, and he's going to pop in and pose those questions to me. Hopefully, Dan, filter them so that you think I can actually answer them before you do that. But first things first, if you're listening to this session, hopefully you will realise that I haven't gone crazy, and you have some idea of why I might be talking about Rebook now, as you're interested enough to listen in. I know we've had a really tough time. Our industry has suffered, and as sales professionals, you've been at the really sharp end of that on the front line. Some of you may have rolled your clients over more than once in the last 10 months or are in the process of doing that again. So as we sit here today, I know that there's uncertainty out there, and you may not know exactly when your next event will happen, but it will happen. And I know, because the team here at Benchmark are busy as well booking clients into events for September, October onwards this year. So this session is about how we can use this time that we've got to plan and prepare and what we can expect to be preparing for. So I haven't gone crazy. But first, before we do that, I'm aware that there's probably quite a varied audience for this session in terms of your experience with Rebook. We know as a team at Benchmark that some of you, some businesses out there firmly have Rebook instilled at the centre of their sales strategy. And for those guys, we're going to be looking later at how we can fast forward that and improve what you already do. But we're also aware that some of you probably have Rebook on your list and you tick it off each year, but you may not be maximising its potential. And for others of you, we know that you probably have never started Rebook. So we're going to be trying to do a little bit for each of you if you're in those categories. So just to clarify exactly what I mean by Rebook, because there can be some misconception. So we're talking specifically about your next in-person event, engaging your clients for that following in-person event, or anything that's going on in between times whilst you're on site. So booking in retention clients a week out from your next in-person event doesn't really count as a rebook in our world, although it may do in yours. So just to be clear, that's what I'm talking about. So everything I'm going to be talking about today is based on that, the benefits that we can see for your clients and for you if we get that in place even better than ever for your next event. So I want to share with you in this session the knowledge that the team here at Benchmark have gained over 20 years of working on rebook projects at trade and consumer events. We have worked as a team. You can see my lovely 3 co-directors and founders there on the screen. I haven't put a picture of myself up because you can see my face. So we have worked with large-scale event organisations to supercharge their sales success and actually work on transformation projects across those businesses. And then we've worked with small organisers as well who we've helped to maximise sales when they may be looking to sell or looking to acquire other businesses. So it can be a really, really powerful tool. We've got a passion for rebook, as you've probably gathered, and what it can do for an event business and for our clients. And we're obviously in the middle at the moment of an evolution in our industry in terms of the way we deliver events, what platforms we deliver them on, and also how our clients and our communities see us. So in order for us to fast forward our sales approach and bounce back as quickly as we possibly can, we believe here that every organiser should be thinking about their rebook and how to do it better. So I'm going to look at 3 things today. We're going to look at what rebook can do for you, why we need to start thinking about it now, and how we can come back better at our first in-person event in terms of our rebook. So it's not overstating it in our view that rebook can secure the future of your event, whether that be virtual, whether it be a series of engagements throughout the year. We need to look at ways that we can instill confidence in our clients, our visitor communities as well, and our teams. And rebook as a project can do that if you engage your entire business in it. So working together with sales, marketing and operations teams collectively ensures the commercial plan and the client messaging and the on-site experience all align to get the best possible results. And that will go a long way to secure the future of your event and the engagement of your exhibitors. And it will give your team focus, and you know, perhaps now more than ever we need some of that. Financially, obviously, that's the most obvious thing that a rebook does. We have a chance to move forward and conduct an effective rebook at your next event and get that security that we need. It brings forward the revenue in your sales cycle, and it allows you to plan and invest in your new event offering, whatever that may be. And obviously your marketing plans, additional engagement events, whether they're digital or whether they're in person or a mixture of both, new technologies, and having the funds to realise those plans in the next 12 months, 18 months will allow you to fast forward in the way that we're looking at today. So securing a significant number of your clients at your next event creates confidence within your team as well and in your communities, because you're talking ahead, you're looking ahead, and it supercharges those marketing efforts as well because they've got so much content to share and creates real momentum for your entire business. And obviously leaving your event with a floor plan. We all have a floor plan. Goodness, we haven't seen many of those in the last 10 months, have we? And nothing sells events like a populated floor plan. And that's really one of the kind of key strategic pieces of a rebook. So events in general do have a retention issue, or some do. And that was pre-COVID. I know Stephen touched on it earlier. Some clients are finding they're having to sort of refill their hopper, if you like, year on year, and losing 40 to 50% in terms of churn for their clients, which it's not only draining on your sales team, obviously, and the resource, in that they're having to redo that every year, but it usually indicates that client focus is not really at the heart of that strategy. So really, we've got to be looking at the customer service. We know that Explory did some research, some case studies. I did a little BC chat with the lovely Natalie Campbell-Reid a couple of months ago, and it showed that in terms of customer satisfaction scores, those exhibitors that were dealt with as partners in a consultative way generally had a better experience with that brand, with that event brand. So clearly, retention doesn't start with rebook. It's a year-round cycle, continual approach, which all of my previous contributors today have mentioned in their sessions. Rebook, however, is a focused and specific opportunity to turn that approach into a retained client, and retained clients secure that event future. But embedding a rebook culture isn't a quick fix. It's not going to happen overnight if you haven't done it before. And I'm aware that some of you have done it year after year after year. Those of you that haven't started, we usually predict that it takes about 3 years to embed a really good rebook culture for your sales teams and your clients. But the rewards for doing that are the stuff of dreams for some of you, and actually having clients queuing up to book space on site at your event and the momentum that creates in your sales process. Not to mention the resource that frees up to invest in other things like new sectors and events and geographies and virtual platforms and interactions. That transforms not only your financial future, but that of your event and your team. So beyond everything, Rebook is a customer service opportunity. And as an overall part of that touch point strategy that we're talking about, Rebook's a chance for your clients to engage face-to-face with you at your event and to share their feedback and insights. So it's just a piece of that jigsaw puzzle and that 365 communication strategy that you really ought to have now. If you didn't have before, you certainly need to have it now. So what does this mean to our clients then? Why would our clients want to rebook? Well, the fact is it's a real challenge for them to buy. And this is a really interesting quote that I like to bring up at the moment from Brent Adamson at Gartner, that the single biggest challenge of selling, as you can read, is actually our customers struggle to buy. So they need us to make it simple for them. They need us to bring all the pieces together to make it work for them on site, because they are having as hard a time as we are as salespeople. They're having a really difficult time buying. So why are our customers struggling to buy? Well, it's more complicated than ever for a customer to buy. According to Gartner, there are between 6 and 10 decision makers involved now in every buying process. And it's not a linear process. So we all talk about pipelines and moving people through the pipeline, but actually for our customers, it's not like that. It's a series of jobs that they have to get done, which range between, well, Gartner predict that it's about 6 jobs from their research, and it ranges from identifying what the problem is through to requirements building, right the way through to validation and deciding if your event or your brand is the right place to spend their money. And more importantly for this session, if we've taken them time to go through this process, so this rebook means that we're talking to people who are already engaged with our brand. So we've already gone through that process with them. Some of you have managed, as I said before, to keep them retained within your brand, even though your live event hasn't happened, and we've done an amazing job at that. So really, we can influence to a certain extent where they are in this series of buying jobs to actually align it with our on-site event and actually get that rebook happening. So we have that control. And by engaging them with your next edition, you're also overcoming that lack of certainty, which everyone struggled with in the past year. I think it's the number one. I think Dan did a survey and he actually reinforced that point, that it's the biggest objection at the moment is the lack of certainty. And of course it is, because we haven't been able to give them that. We simply haven't been able to deliver it, and we may not be able to for some time. But by the time your next in-person event actually happens, we have every reason to believe that the world will be coping with COVID-19. We've had some great news today about the vaccine and the impact that's having on passing it on. And there's been some amazing work from an operational and a practical point of view to make sure that we're going to be safe and we can actually instill some of that confidence in our audience. So we'll not only recover, but what we want to do is fast forward those relationships and our sales approach in the process. And how do we do that then? So we've got to deliver simplicity. We've got to make it easy for them to buy from us. Yes, the sales process is more complex than ever, but we are working hard to get to know our clients like never before. And I know that many of you have been doing that. Then we have already started to create those partnership style relationships that we've all been talking about, and understanding their day-to-day challenges, because we're checking back in with them on a much more frequent basis than perhaps we were before. And we've understanding a bit more about their business and how it's evolving month by month. So we're in a better position than ever to understand how to make the process simple for them to buy and who we need to engage in getting that decision early on. We can then give our clients a clear opportunity to make the process of buying as simple as possible face-to-face at your next in-person event. That's Rebook. And by communicating that opportunity before the next event, we're going to create that confidence in our event, that it's going to happen, but that they'll be able to maximize their investment by committing at that point. And then that investment is obviously, it's seen year round through everything else, so all the extended marketing exposure that we give them from your event brand and any other digital events and engagement that you may have planned in your next sales cycle. So why do we need to start now? Well, we know why we need to. Hopefully I've just convinced you, if you didn't already know, why we need to implement a rebook and the impact that can have on your event. But why do we want to start thinking about it now? Especially if your event isn't taking place till the end of this year or possibly even into 2022. Is it too soon to think about rebook now? And is it something that we should just think about in the initial sort of preceding 3 weeks before our event happens? Well, we think not. The number one reason when we speak to event directors of them not managing to deliver the kind of rebook that they want to deliver is a lack of time. And they don't manage to maximize that opportunity because they don't have time to get the teams in, to get the strategy in place. And so it's really important, we feel, that we can start to think about this now while we have the time. You obviously can't just rock up on site on the last day of your event with a contract in your hand and expect a signature. I hope we all know that. And if we didn't know it before, we certainly know it now. And that goes against everything that I would advise, or any other sales advisor would tell you. We all know we need to have these partnership style relationships. And we probably don't need much more convincing of that, hopefully. It should be part of your overall contact strategy, and feeding in all the information about the other events and things that you've got going on throughout the year should be a natural progression to start to talk about rebook at your next event. It's part of the experience of your brand, and it needs to be delivered as a managed project, and that takes engagement and planning across the business, and that's something we can spend time doing now. Delivering an effective rebook is all about the planning, and the one thing we can do right now that will perhaps would benefit from is to focus on something for us, for the sales teams out there that have been working super hard in difficult circumstances, is to look ahead and start to plan that strategy now. This all takes time, so it's a good thing for us to be spending our time doing. So can we actually mention this to our clients now? We need to get all of these things in place that you can see on your screen. We need to understand, in order to deliver a rebook, we've got to really look ahead and think about our 2022 strategy, the wider impact that a rebook would have on that. And obviously we need to incentivize our sales teams effectively to get that rebook happening, and join that up with the marketing teams and the exhibitor experience. Can we mention it to our clients now? Well, it depends, I would say. It depends when your event takes place and what your clients are telling you. As always, our ears are out more than our mouth is going, hopefully. I know we like to talk as salespeople, but we've already covered the importance of talking to clients on a regular basis. I think it's important that when you are talking to them, you take their lead on when they're ready to talk about your next edition. But we can bring that conversation along. If we're checking back in with them and we take them back to those original decisions that they made when they first engaged with your event, why they wanted to participate, what's changing in their business and what's happening in 2022 for them. In those conversations, you can actually bring them back to that, and you can help them to go back to how they're going to measure success at that in-person event. And then that in turn helps you to plan that rebook and the kind of conversation that you're going to be having. And if they're engaging in virtual opportunities with you, you can position that conversation alongside the opportunity to come back to the live event, and use any data as well. That's important. That's a new asset that we haven't had before. So any data that you've gained from any of your virtual engagements, you can use that to play into those conversations and to start to think about how you can tailor that relationship with that particular client and your in-person event. So these pre-event conversations enable you to discuss who they want to see at the event and tackle any sort of quality over quantity issues as well. That was touched on earlier in a session, actually. We expect that we're going to probably have fewer people at our event, but it's not about the footfall this year. We need to ask the question of our clients who they want to see, and we need to then really try and drill down and understand who they need to see, because it's not about the volume, and measuring that is going to be really, really important next year. Most importantly, these kind of conversations are an opportunity to add value to your client and build that partnership and instill confidence in them as well, as we talked about before. So how then do we fast forward this rebook experience for your clients? How do we make it better? So for those of you out there who are already rebook pros and you already do it year after year and it's central to your sales strategy for your event, how can we actually do better? How can we use this time to not only be on pause, but actually to fast forward and deliver a better experience for our clients and better returns for us in a business? What are the key elements they need to see from us as a sales team? What they need from us is they need the opportunity, the incentive, and the experience. And these are three things that you'll be familiar with, but they have a different meaning now this time round. As we've gone through the experience that we have and into next year, they do have a different meaning. So I've talked about the ongoing dialogue for our clients a lot in this session. And as part of that consultative approach and partnership approach, we need to give specific opportunity and trigger to book for future events. You may decide that some or all of your clients could be given the opportunity to pre-book space, and some of you will be familiar with that. You can give preferential treatment to clients using that tool, and that can be really powerful because it rewards them for their commitment to you and your brand. But once we get on site, there is often a resourcing challenge. And I guess when we go on site this time round, there may be a larger resourcing challenge than there has been in previous years, because sadly, some of the teams are smaller than they have been. We've lost some of our fellow event professionals, our sales professionals in the sector. So it's really, really important that every client gets spoken to in a rebook scenario, because you're leveling up then. You're giving those companies a chance to take more space, to engage in different ways. And if you just speak to your key clients, then you're not able to do that. So it brings these resourcing challenges, and the solution really to that, the resourcing challenge, is obviously to outsource in some way. Now that may be to other people in your business. It may be getting other sales teams involved, and we've seen that work really effectively. You need to consider how big your team needs to be before you make that decision. And here we work to one person for every 10 clients per day of your event. So we work on, if you had a 3-day event, we'd say that one of your sales team can look after 30 clients, and that enables you to have some really, really meaningful conversations with them. Most of you probably don't have a sales team that's large enough to do that. So you need to bolster them, and that's either, as I say, with internal teams, or you can come to a specialist like Benchmark to do that, or you may have other avenues, other friends that you have that are in the sales sector that you can bring in. The most important thing, if you're going to bring external or internal resource who don't work on your event year round, is that you have a joined up approach, an inclusive approach to doing that. They go on site as one team, and they're incentivized as one team. And that everyone is on the same page. So obvious things like sharing the strategies, sharing information on your clients, delving back into that CRM and giving them the information they need to have meaningful conversations. There sometimes can be concerns over this approach, actually, because of bringing in external contributors. But I think you overcome that. We're proof that you can overcome that if you spend that time planning and you spend that time giving the client information that they need. The benefits of doing it and having the right number of people on site your event is that you are giving everybody the time that they need to have a meaningful conversation, and you're coming back with a decent pipeline that your sales team can then focus on. So client incentives for a rebook. So we are familiar with these as sales professionals. Location and price are fairly obvious ones. So we actually incentivize them by preferential choice on the location on the event floor, or now in our virtual world, you might incentivize them to be the first to be given offers in relation to your virtual event. So it may be sponsorship opportunities, or it may be roundtables, whatever it is. You're actually giving the preferential choice to do that in advance. Price is obviously an incentive as well, and usually there'll be some kind of incentive to book on site, and the rates will then go up throughout the year. So we'd certainly advocate something like that. But clearly pricing is a really sensitive thing that each of you has an individual approach to at the moment, and that you will have had to reflect upon in the last 10 months. So that's something that you need to really drill down on in your strategy. The biggest incentive, I think, this year is the exposure piece. So now that we are not just 2 or 3 day events, now that we are really operating, hopefully, as year-round engagement communities for our clients, I think that exposure piece is the incentive for people to rebook, because by rebooking on site at your next in-person event, they're obviously getting the benefit of those 12 months year-round exposure, and perhaps there might be other events in the cycle that they are engaging in as well. Most importantly, I think, in terms of rebook, it's actually the practical delivery of it in terms of how you can make it better. So if we're trying to fast forward rebook and we're trying to do it better than we ever have done before, it's all about giving our clients that experience. And we have spent quite some time here at Benchmark in the last 10 months looking at who out there in our industry is actually doing great things that will help us to deliver a great customer experience for our exhibitors. And most of these have been sort of technology partners, to be honest, and this is one of them. So a digital rebook can really, really enhance the experience your clients have. So having that digital floor plan and digital contracts and actually instantly allocating space gives you the control of your rebook. It motivates your clients. I know there is a sense sometimes that having that old-fashioned paper plan is quite exciting, and it is, and I've experienced that, but actually it's can be open to errors and open to mistakes. So it's really nice to have a digital floor plan if you can, and actually show your clients from your last experience in person to the next one that you've moved on with that. You have control. You can motivate them to book because they can see real time the space that's booked, and you can save hours and hours of your sales team's time afterwards in sorting out floor plans and who booked what. Also, quite interestingly, our partners, Freeman's Blueprint floor plan has real-time payments available as well, which is a really interesting idea and something that we might see more of as we go through 2021-22. Another technology partner that we have that will help us to fast forward our rebook is this idea that more than ever, we are going to need to prove return for our clients. And I think we know it's going to be tough. We know it's going to be tough to sell on site, and we know that we haven't really had any data in our sales team's hands before now. So this is a really key way that we can help our sales teams to have meaningful conversations with our clients on site. So they'll be able to, through this Bluebird app, which actually operates on a tablet, they will be able to actually see how their exhibitors are performing, and not only use that in a sales conversation, but also use that to help them if they are struggling in terms of exposure, in terms of how many visitors are moving around. It works through the visitor app. And I think it's a really, really interesting idea to be able to give our sales teams a tool like this when they are next on site in person. It means that we can actually close that gap between our form of media, live events, and other forms of media in terms of the data and insights. And obviously our exhibitors have been used to having some of these insights through our virtual events throughout the year. So that's a really interesting tool, and something that I'm sure the team at Crowd Connected would love to talk to you about, and equally the team at Benchmark are happy to as well. So we've planned, we've got a strategy, we've got some brilliant technology in place. Our sales teams are armed with all the information that they need. So technically nothing could possibly go wrong, right? Because we're ready. They know what they're going to be expected to do. They're excited for in-person events. And of course, they're going to be all champing at the bit to rebook, aren't they? Obviously, that's not going to be that simple. So one of the things that I said to Dan that I would look at in this session is the kind of objections that we're going to get that may be either new this time round or actually will have evolved. So these were my sort of top three that I think, like you, I haven't rebooked on site at a post-COVID in-person event either, but certainly from what clients are telling us and from what the research is telling us, this is probably what we could expect. So firstly, the lack of confidence, and that has been the real killer over the last 10 months, is that we haven't been able to be confident in the fact that our live event will happen. However, now that we've positioned ourselves as year-round partners with our clients, that live event happening isn't really the deal breaker. Yes, of course, they're signing up for space. Yes, of course, you need to have all the clauses in place so that if it does cancel that in-person event again, that you can reassure them in that. That's kind of a given. But there is positive news. You have got secured dates. You have got other ways that you are giving them value for money around that live event. So actually that lack of confidence that they have in your live event happening will diminish, hopefully, by the time we deliver our first in-person event, because you will have proved to them that you can deliver that in-person event because they're there. But equally, if there is any concern around that, we can actually speak to that in terms of that year-round value that they get from investing in your brand. The second objection that I wanted to look at was not having a decision maker on site. Now, this happens. We know it happens anyway, but actually it might happen more when we're next on site. And if, according to Bill Gates, we're expecting 50% less business travel. I don't know if he's an authority on that, but if that's the case, then we might expect that perhaps we haven't got such senior people on site on our stands, or it could be that they only send the most senior decision makers, and we just don't know at the moment. And obviously that is part of that relationship building conversation. We need to establish who's going to be there, and all of those communications around your rebook establish that. And our job is to get our clients to that point where they can make the decision on site, and to get all those jobs ticked off that I talked about earlier, so that actually it's all aligned to get them to sign up while they're there. Those pre-coms, the pre-book, the actual pipeline that you have is all really, really important to be able to do that. And actually not having the decision maker on site is not a deal breaker, certainly if you know beforehand, because you can mitigate against that. And if you find out when you're there, that is still not a deal breaker if you have a strong enough case for them to need to sign up while they're there. The third objection, which is always there, budget's always an objection, but actually less budget than ever, because they've drawn all those budgets back in, and now what they had allocated to live events just isn't there anymore. And they've obviously, the reason they're standing there in front of you at your next live event is because they invested in that perhaps some time ago. So they may have less budget, but this is all about that value piece for your event, and it's where they're going to spend their money. Your event may be the only one of its kind in your industry. And we've got to look at the bigger picture of their impact on their sales for not just for 20 and 21, but also into 22. So it's that value piece that you're all really used to speaking about, I'm sure. So they're the top three objections that I chose to look at. I don't know if Dan's got any more he wants to throw at me, but he'll pop in a minute, I'm sure, if he has. So that really summarises what I wanted to say today. To be honest, I've been nice and succinct at half an hour. It's not easy. I know it's not easy, and I've probably thrown lots of information at you. I hope some of you found some of it interesting, but the most important thing is don't ditch Rebook. Don't not think about it. Whether you've done it before or not done it before, if you need some support, then the team here at Benchmark can help you if you just need some advice. But the most important thing is that you plan to do it, and you plan to do it well. And don't look back, basically.
Thank you, Debbie. Fantastic presentation. Covered all the bases. Yeah, I think from my perspective, as you know, I worked at Closer Steel, and we've got Ian Reynolds on, who made a comment here. He says hello to you.
Hi, Ian.
That we used to get tremendous sort of rates of rebook, 100%, 120% of sort of money in the room. Do you work with organisers, I guess, on the terms of those rebooks? Because we had a cool-off period. Yep. That I've worked at other places where they rather just go live and take a lower percentage. What's your view? Do you have a view, or would you just work with each organiser specifically?
I think that second thing is the point. There is no one answer to that. I think call-offs work in certain circumstances and not in others. We've worked in both situations where there's no cool-off, and actually that can be quite powerful and dynamic, and you know, really does put momentum behind the rebook. But cool-off is really, really helpful for some businesses, isn't it? If they don't have that decision maker there particularly, and they need to go, well, they've got a key budget decision making time in the next 3 weeks. I think the important thing is not to have too long a cool off, because then you lose that momentum and you get a bit of buyer's regret before they've actually bought.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, you make a good point about the fact that they might have turned up at the event. They've already had some activity with you. Now, again, in my experience, we only ever booked the stand, regardless of the rest of the package that they had.
Mm-hmm.
So we got them, we booked the stand, and then we're telling them, right, we'll speak to you another time about sponsorship, because we don't know, the packages might change, but obviously the stand's going to be the stand. But even then, you could upgrade if you wanted to. What's your view on that? Do you think it's best to keep it simple and just book the one thing? Or would you go in with, are you happy to talk to people about booking packages?
I think, again, it's a bit horses for courses, that, isn't it? I think actually at the moment, because we're now in this sort of perhaps more 365 situation than we've ever been. So it might just not be, you're talking about packages, but it may be that we're actually talking about other events as well and rolling those into packages, as well as we might roll in, sort of sponsorship or media packages in the past. You might be talking about rolling in other events. I think my view is, in terms of this first live event back, it might be best to focus on getting them into that next live event again, and then speaking to them about the other opportunities that are there, and actually putting them as sort of upgrades, if you like, throughout the year, so you can keep that conversation open then as well.
Yeah, I think you're right, because also this is a physical event. Clearly, there's only so much. I know we can, widen the floor, but there's only so many of the premium spaces, if you like. So you can trade off the fact that clearly they're going to go sooner rather than later. So if you're at that position now and you want it again next year, there's no point of waiting and discussing the rest of the package.
Yeah, I mean, that location thing, which I touched on, that kind of incentive is, obviously that's a biggie, isn't it? On a lot of events, that kind of, it might not be the front row, it might be around particular features, but actually securing a particular space is sometimes a real driver, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think we've got one comment here from Nika, who also suggested essentially that, I guess when you're talking to your customers on site, it's not just about rebooking. So as you said, you work with another company to provide data and stats. So even if they didn't rebook, it's good to still have that conversation with them.
I think, I mean, it's never about the rebook. The conversation you have with them on site is never about the rebook. It's about that engagement and part of that conversation. But the rebook is that's your driver, isn't it? And that's actually what you're hoping to achieve. But equally, we all want to achieve great, as you said. I know Ian's here and they get 100% rebooks. That should be part of that consultative conversation, and you shouldn't be signing people up if you're got their arm behind their back. That's we never advocate that, because that is absolutely not the kind of relationship that you want to have with your clients.
Sure, and I think that's where in my experience, the cool off helps, because if you've got a bunch of new exhibitors, clearly the first retort or response to you might be, well, I need to see how the show's gone and go back and follow up the leads. And obviously the cool off period allows them to do that whilst price protecting them and also confirming a position that they want.
Yeah, it's interesting, that one, isn't it? Because that's quite a common one. That, I just don't know. And particularly if they are a new exhibitor, a first time exhibitor, that is, you can understand, can't you, how they need to sort of evaluate. But the thing about that, the conversation that we would normally have with those individuals is that, if we've understood from the outset what they're trying to achieve, and Stephen was talking about this kind of education piece, wasn't it, around, what is it that would mean this is successful for you? And if it was about the number of leads and how much, revenue that converts to, then obviously they might need a bit of time to do that. But actually, if it was about brand exposure or launching a new product or any of those things, do you really need that time afterwards to consider it? You might do. And as I say, we're not about forcing anybody's hand with it, but actually sometimes that can be put up just as much as I don't have a budget, as Paul was talking about earlier. It can be kind of put up as that objection, can't it, which will just send you on your merry way. And I think it's important that we really dig into that a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, again, every organizer will have different terms and conditions, but you don't always need the final decision maker to sign a form, as long as they've spoken to that person and they're comfortable signing on the company's behalf. Then that can work too.
Yeah, well, we've we've had emails flying around with DocuSign attachments and all sorts all over the world. You know, it's you don't have to have that decision maker on site, but I think if you've got the person, you know, if that person you're speaking to is the decision maker, which hopefully they are most of the time, then you know, those conversations are part of that bigger cycle of communication, aren't they, what we've talked about. And if they're not, if they have their boss has to sign off, then getting them in that position and understanding that you're going to be asked to do this and this is your opportunity, this is us kind of rewarding you for your loyalty to our brand, to give you this opportunity to book now, to take a space or to commit to, you know, other events that are happening throughout the year, then I think they get themselves in that position where they expect it to happen, and then that's what you want, isn't it?
And then also post-show, which is still part of Rebook, and I don't know whether you get involved with this, but obviously it's important to send out the updated floor plans, trade off that the fact they've just experienced the show, and obviously trying to get them to commit, obviously on site, but if they can't, directly after.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a little bit fluid, that kind of that post-show bit, isn't it? So some events we work on, they would regard, you know, a week after the event still as being on site and actually, you know, clearing up that pipeline. I think it's important that whatever you do, however much effort you've put into that strategy for that rebook, that it doesn't obviously stop on that last day. There's sometimes a tendency that everyone breathes a sigh of relief and heads off on holiday for a couple of weeks. But actually, you know, which is absolutely right that they've earned that. But actually, that's a really critical period, isn't it? And if you need to come off site, those people that said no, but particularly if you're bringing in people from other teams or you're bringing in an outsourced provider, you need to make sure that you've actually got all that information in a pipeline that's actionable for the team. And even if it's, you know, even if it's a case of sitting someone down and making those phone calls, just to kind of keep that conversation going while most of them are off in Malibu or wherever it is they are. I think it's important that we make sure that momentum is maintained.
No, I absolutely agree, because you only get a window of opportunity to keep them engaged before they move on to the next show that they're planning for or that they're going to book.
Well, and they're still feeling the brand and the impact and those people that they spoke to and all the buzz. It's all, you know, it's all still there, isn't it? Which is all the reasons why we do rebooks.
They're still accessing the data, the leads. You know, that there's still a lot of contact points. Or chance to have contact with them to then talk about the following year. Debbie, thank you so much. Obviously, you've got your details up there, and the Benchmark Collective team. So anyone that I guess just wants to have a general chit chat about their rebook strategies, I'm sure you're happy to do that.
Of course, always.
So thank you so much, and no doubt we will see you very soon.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks everyone for listening.
Cheers. Thank you. So guys, that brings us to the end of the day, the 4 sessions that we've had. I just want to thank everyone that's tuned in live or you're watching on demand. I want to thank all the speakers. So obviously Debbie Lee from Benchmark Collective, Stephen Murta, the exhibition guy, our panelists, Paul Britton from Thames Valley Chamber of Commerce. We have Fiona Jackson from Pyramid Analytics and John Davey from Avast. And to start the day, we also had Paul Streeter. So fantastic sessions, all be available on demand. Check out my LinkedIn feed, my YouTube channel at Dan Assor. I've got lots of other content coming up. Couldn't possibly tell you what it all is at the moment. But please just keep an eye out on my LinkedIn feed and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.